Hi everyone, my name is Natalie. So we are in the last few days of May and Pride Month is around the corner. I am excited for the month and I have some books that I wanted to recommend to you for LGBTQ writers and books with these themes running through them, as well as some books that I would like to read in June and the rest of the year. I wanted to include the TBR because a lot of these books, or mostly the majority of these books, I have bought this year in the most recent weeks and I'm really excited to read them, and so I'm probably going to end up reading a few of them in June. The rest of them I will prioritize throughout the year, so I wanted to share them with you. But let's get through the recommendations first. So my biggest recommendation for Pride Month and for nonfiction reading this year, in general, because it's my favorite book of the year so far, is Ace by Angela Chen. This is a book about sexuality and desire, sexual attraction, sexuality, and relationships, and how sexuality fits into our relationships, romantic or otherwise. And I think it's one of those books that I would strongly recommend if you identify as ace, as I do. Then I think you will find both a sense of being seen, which is important in its own right, as well as, for me at least, it was very helpful in considering some of the details of my identity and the gray areas that confront people who identify as ace in a particular way. But I would also recommend it for everyone because I think it's maybe even more important if you want to reflect on how you speak to other people and how you push maybe some of your own expectations on relationships and sexuality on other people that have an impact on how they view themselves. So just an all-round very, very strong urge and recommendation for everyone. How Far the Light Reaches by Sabrina Imbler was a really good memoir that talked a lot about the strength of community, and I feel like that would be a particularly good book for Pride Month. Argonauts by Maggie Nelson was really good at discussing both bodily transformation and transition for her partner, but also talking about relationships and how the body transformations of both her and her partner changed or challenged maybe their relationships' borders, and how it evolved through these transformations of a physical sense. I also wanted to mention a favorite of last year, The Lonely City by Olivia Lang. It is a book about a lot of different things, loneliness and urban landscapes and art in particular, but it also is talking about the AIDS crisis, and I think those sections of the book has really stuck with me. In particular, the way that it connects to the theme of loneliness and isolation. I would strongly recommend that book in general, but also for this particular reason. Another favorite from a few years ago is Permafrost by Eva Baltasar, translated by Julia Sanchez. This author also has a more recent book that has been translated into English that I would like to read. I don't know if it is if it has any LGBTQ themes in it, but Permafrost is a character study of a lesbian protagonist. So I really love that book. It is a very depressed protagonist. Really fantastic book in a very short package. I also wanted to mention Tove Jansson. She was living in a relationship with a woman for the greater portion of her later life. She had relationships with women throughout her life, but towards the end of her life she lived with a woman, a another artist, and she reflects on this relationship in various ways in her nonfiction writing, both in her letters and in the letter notes from an island, and you can also read about her. I just sort of associate Tove Jansson in a way of being a very positive person, a very positive example of living very true to your sexuality. And lastly, for my recommendations is one I read ages ago, but I really liked it, and it is a graphic novel called The Prince and the Dressmaker by Jen Wang. This is one of the main characters is a boy who likes cross-dressing. Just remember the gender fluidity being central to the book, and that is why I wanted to recommend it here. It is very positive. It's about friendship, it's about being who you are, it's about enjoying self-expression, and that being partly done through clothing in this book particularly. But it's just a really fun, cute, perfect coming of age, all age type comic that I would definitely recommend for everyone. And I just really appreciated the gender fluidity theme as it was dealt with by Jen Wang. Let's get on to the TBR books. So all of these books except for one, I think, I have bought this year. So this is kind of a book haul as well. So first we have The Transgender Issue, An Argument for Justice by Sean Fay. I borrowed this from the library originally based on Oliver's recommendation. I'll put a link to his channel in the description below. But I felt like this would be the kind of book that I would underline a lot. So I will put a link specifically to the video where Oliver talked about this book, because that was the reason I decided to pick it up. It is, I think, a book about the politics and human rights angle of living as a transgender person. And it starts off talking a lot about media coverage and the angles in the media coverage, obviously very negative. It kind of connects with what I've been seeing recently, like in the last week, articles in local newspapers on how many people regret transitioning, like the surgery, and it just makes me so frustrated. So I suspect that I will be feeling frustrated with this, reading this book, but I feel like it would be a good laying some groundwork for reading more transgender memoirs that I've been picking up a lot of, and there will be more of that in this pile. So there's this one, and this is definitely a priority read, but we'll see. Speaking of transgender memoirs, we have Amateur, A Reckoning with Gender Identity and Masculinity by Thomas Page McBee. And Thomas Page McBee is a trans man. This is a memoir about his life, and says, trains to fight in a charity match at Madison Square Garden, he struggles to untangle the vexed relationship between masculinity and violence. Through his experience of boxing, learning to get hit and to hit back, wrestling with the camaraderie of the gym, confronting the betrayals and strength of his body, McBee examines the weight of male violence and the limitations of conventional masculinity. I decided to pick this one up because I watched a documentary. I can't remember what it was called, but it was about a particular trans man's life. This author was one of the people who were interviewed in that documentary, so I wanted to pick it up because of that. So yeah, there's this one. Another one that I had my eye on, another one that I have had my eye on since it came out is An Apartment on Uranus by Paul B. Preciado. And this seems like it's kind of a philosophical angle on sexuality and gender. Uranus is the coldest planet in the solar system, a frozen giant named after a Greek deity. It is also the inspiration for Uranism, a concept coined by the writer Carl Heinrich Ulrich in 1864 to define the third sex and the rights of those who love differently. Following in Ulrich's footsteps, Paul Preciado dreams of an apartment on Uranus where he can live free of the modern power taxonomies of race, gender, class, or disability. In his bold and transgressive book, Preciado recounts his transformation from Beatrice into Paul B. and examines other processes of political, cultural, and sexual transition, reflecting on socio-political issues including the rise of neo-fascism in Europe, the criminalization of migrants, the harassment of trans children, the technological appropriation of the uterus, and the role artists and museums might play in the writing of a new social contract. I suspect that this will be kind of dense in the writing. That's the impression I'm getting from the philosophical and sort of literary history type angle that it takes, but I am very much into that kind of thing, so I think I will really like this one. Next we have a fiction book. I don't have a lot of those in this pile, but this one intrigued me. It is called Concerning My Daughter by Kim Hee-jin, translated by Jamie Chang. This is a lesbian, this is about a lesbian protagonist. And it says when a mother allows when a mother allows her 30-something daughter to move in with her, she does so begrudgingly. She wants to help, but with her daughter Green comes Green's girlfriend Lane. The narrator struggles to understand Green's non-traditional life choices, fearing that without a husband and kids, Green will end up alone, not unlike the elderly patients at the care home where the narrator works. It combines both the queer theme as well as the mother-daughter relationship that I am very much into, that kind of relationship exploration in fiction anyway. I've not been that drawn to reading fiction this year so far, and I feel like I'm very particular with what I am in the mood for, but this sounds like it could be exactly the kind of thing that I would be in for, so maybe I will pick this one up during Pride Month as a bit of a change of pace from all of the nonfiction. Then we have a book that I had on my Springathon TBR and that I still really want to read, and that is Afterglow, a dog memoir by Eileen Miles, and this is about Eileen Miles' relationship with their dog, and I suspect that this will make me emotional because the dog dies, and it's about the last few days months, years of the dog's life. I think it is also about craft and writing, which is all things I really like, so I am very much still very intrigued to read this, and since I did not get to it in May, hopefully I can make it happen in June. Next we have another memoir. You can sense a theme here. That is All Down Darkness Wide by Sean Hevitt, and this is a Irish writer. He has some kind of crisis with his relationship, and wrestling with this, Sean Hevitt delves deep into his own history, enlisting the ghost of queer figures and poets before him. From a 19th century cemetery in Liverpool to the pine forest of Gothenburg, Hevitt plumbs the darkness in search of solace and hope. And honestly, the part of the description that kind of raised my eyebrows and made me want to immediately buy this is because of the mention of Gothenburg, because that is where I live. I don't often come across it in any type of writing, even local to me, so that alone made me curious, but also this sounds fantastic, and it has a fantastic cover as well. I'm intrigued. I haven't heard anything about this, but it's a new release of this year, I think, or maybe last year, I don't know. Then we have a book that I don't think is as much a memoir as it is kind of a combination of maybe personal story with more critical writing and sort of essay type thing. That is think what this is. It's called Refusing Compulsory Sexuality, A Black Asexual Lens on Our Sex-Obsessed Culture by Sharonda J. Brown. So obviously, because I loved Ace by Angela Chen, I've been on the lookout for more books on asexuality, and most of the books that had been published before Ace were more like guidebooks or like pamphlet type things. So I've been on the lookout for more in the same vein as Ace, and this one I think came out late last year, and I hadn't heard anything about it, but I obviously was intrigued. But it's again, I'm probably going to be questioning a lot of the norms and just sort of assumptions on sexuality and desire in relationships, in people's lives, what makes people complete, what makes their lives successful, what creates their happiness, and all of that. It says, in this exploration of what it means to be black and asexual in America today, Sharonda J. Brown takes an incisive look at how anti-blackness, white supremacy, patriarchy, heteronormativity, and capitalism enact harm against asexual people, contextualizing ace-phobia within a racial framework in the first book of its kind. Brown advocates for the A in LGBTQ IA+, affirming that to be asexual is to be queer, despite the gatekeeping and denial that often says otherwise. I feel like this will be definitely a priority for me. Another fiction book I have is Carol by Patricia Highsmith. I recently watched a documentary on Patricia Highsmith, and that made me really intrigued about her life. But I thought that before I continue on to pick up her nonfiction writing, like her diaries, I would read her famous novel, Carol, that is supposedly very autobiographical. And I have watched the movie adaptation, so I know the general gist of the story, but I'm looking forward to reading it. But it's basically a lesbian love story that is supposed to have a happy ending. I don't remember the movie ending, so we shall see, and if I remember as I read it, but I really am looking forward to reading this one. Then we have Voice of the Fish by Lars Horn, a lyric essay. This is published by Grey Wolf Press, and they do amazing work. They have a lot of fantastic sounding titles, and one of my favorite books of all time, The Collective Schizophrenias, was published by them, so I always have a particular eye for their titles. This one sounds like it was made for me because there's this overlap between marine life themes and queer writing. It says, living in Russia and traveling through Georgia as queer and transmasculine, modeling in baths of dead squid for their mother's photography projects, lying bedbound, unable to speak. In Voice of the Fish, Lars Horn dives into marine history, theology, art, and illness, and questions the presumed uniformity of the body as cultural and scientific object, illuminating ways of seeing and being that resist binaries that fracture, mutate. Horn blends the aquatic, mystical, and physical to reach a place beyond them all. I feel like this is both thematically really, really interesting to me, but it also seems like it would be interesting in the writing and structure of it. So can't wait to get to this one. Probably going to happen in June. Very, very soon. The last one I have is a tiny book, and that is A Short History of Queer Women by Kirsty Lower. This is also a really good cover. Queer women have been written out of history since, well, forever. But historians famously care about women, said no one. From Anne Bonny and Mary Read, who sailed the seas together disguised as pirates, to U.S. football captain Megan Rapinoe declaring you can't win a championship without gays on your team. Via countless literary salons and tuxedos, A Short History of Queer Women sets the record straight on women who have loved other women through the ages. I feel like that is self-explanatory what this book is trying to do. I'm really looking forward to it. I feel like this will be more of a fun reading experience compared to some of the other ones maybe. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it, as I do with all of these books. So those were the books I wanted to talk about for my both recommendations and some books that I will be picking and choosing from in June and in the next few months to come for some pride reading, queer reading, LGBTQ plus reading, whatever term you use. And I hope you all are, I hope you have found something that piques your interest. Let me know if any of these titles sounded like something that you would want to pick up. If you've read any of these books, I would love to discuss them with you. And I would also love to know if you have any other books that you have on your reading plans, reading horizons for Pride Month. That was all I wanted to say today. Hope you're doing well and you're taking care of yourselves, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.